Welcome and thank you for joining us for another deep dive. Today, we're cutting through the noise on a topic that is absolutely critical for any organization aspiring to scale with clarity and control rather than, descending into chaos. You've almost certainly worked with a project manager, maybe many of them, but what about a PMO, a project management office? If you've ever found yourself asking, isn't that just a fancy name for like a big group of project managers? Then you are definitely not alone. It's a remarkably common point of confusion, I find, even for many seasoned professionals navigating the complexities of organizational growth.
Well, you've absolutely hit on a crucial distinction there,
Yeah.
and it's one we see leaders grapple with constantly. While both project managers and project management offices are, deeply involved with projects, reporting progress, managing risks, they fundamentally serve entirely different purposes within an organization. Our mission today is really to clear that fog, helping you, our listener, truly understand what a PMO is, how it radically differs from a project manager, and maybe most importantly, why grasping this difference becomes absolutely critical as your organization grows or adopts complex new tech initiatives or navigates major transitions like, say, mergers and acquisitions. This isn't just about dry definitions. It's about equipping you, the leader, with the knowledge to set your business up to scale predictably, strategically, and with far less friction and, frankly, wasted effort. For any executive or VP who's evaluating how to optimize their company's execution engine, understanding this difference is, well, it's paramount.
You've really set the stage perfectly for why this distinction is so vital. So let's dive right into that fundamental difference. What precisely separates a project manager from a project management office?
Okay, at its absolute essence, a project manager, a PM, is an individual, right? A leader responsible for the end-to-end delivery of a single specific project. Their focus is intense, it's singular, taking that project from its initial idea right through to final closure, ensuring it adheres precisely to its defined boundaries of scope, time, and budget. Their job is squarely on execution, getting that particular initiative across the finish line successfully. Think of them maybe as the driver of a high-performance car. Their expertise is in navigating that single vehicle safely and efficiently from point A to point B, dealing with the immediate road conditions, the traffic, getting that specific cargo to its destination.
Right, the driver focused on that specific journey.
Exactly. Now, in stark contrast, a project management office, the PMO, it's not an individual. It's a dedicated organizational function. It could be a department or even just a team that governs how all projects are selected, managed, and measured across the entire organization. Its focus is completely different. It's on consistency, enterprise-wide governance, and, most critically, ensuring that all projects align with and actively contribute to the broader strategic goals of the business.
Hmm.
So if the PM is expertly driving that individual car,
hmm
the PMO is like the visionary city planner and the traffic engineer combined. They design the entire road network, the methodologies, the processes, the standards. They set the rules for how all cars operate on those roads. They manage the traffic flow, and they ensure every vehicle is going in the right strategic direction at the optimal speed with the right fuel. Their concern is making sure the entire transportation system functions optimally and is strategically aligned for the whole city's long-term prosperity.
That analogy, the car versus the entire road network, that immediately clarifies the scope. It's not subtle at all. It's a foundational difference in how an organization operates systemically. It distinguishes individual project execution from, well, enterprise-wide orchestration. But I imagine some leaders might be thinking, okay, I get the analogy, but why does this mix-up really matter in a practical sense? Aren't we just talking semantics here? How would you explain its practical impact for a leader trying to steer the ship?
That's a really perceptive question, and it absolutely does matter hugely. When companies misunderstand the core role, or maybe more importantly, the type of PMO they genuinely need, they often make one of two critical mistakes. Either they don't build one at all, mistakenly believing they can just, muddle through with ad hoc processes.
Which rarely works long term.
Right, rarely. Or they create a sort of nominal PMO that exists only in name, lacking real authority or purpose. The other common pitfall, which you kind of highlighted, is they might inadvertently overburden their really skilled project managers with governance tasks that simply don't align with their core competencies or their primary job, which is delivering that one project. These are tasks that should naturally fall under a PMO's purview. The direct and very tangible result of this widespread confusion, it's inconsistent project delivery right across the board. It's a significant misalignment of projects with overall strategic goals, and it's a profound recurring difficulty in scaling the business predictably and effectively. This directly impacts your ability to grow, to innovate, and to manage complex initiatives efficiently. It often leads to missed opportunities and these hidden costs that leaders may not even realize they're incurring day after day.
All right, let's zoom in on the project manager first, because that's the role I think many of us are most familiar with. Beyond just managing a project, what does a PM actually do day to day? What are those crucial activities that really define their role?
Yeah, a project manager truly owns the end-to-end delivery of that single initiative. They are the critical bridge between the high-level strategic goals set by executives and the detailed, actionable roadmap required to achieve them. They then guide a cross-functional team through every twist and turn of execution to make sure that initiative is delivered on time, on budget, and to the defined scope. Their core responsibilities are quite hands-on and absolutely critical for individual project success. So first, there's project planning. This is where they're basically the cartographers of the project journey, right? Defining the scope, building detailed timelines, allocating specific resources to tasks, and diligently maintaining that project plan throughout its life cycle.
The map maker.
Exactly. Secondly, they're responsible for risk management. They're constantly identifying, assessing, and proactively mitigating potential risks before those issues balloon into major roadblocks. They're kind of the early warning system for their specific project. Thirdly, they handle change control. When things inevitably shift, and they always do, a PM evaluates and manages those change requests. They ensure the impacts of any proposed change are thoroughly understood, formally approved, documented before implementation. It's about maintaining discipline amidst all that dynamism.
Keeping things on the rails even when changes come up.
Precisely. And fourthly, stakeholder communication is absolutely vital. They coordinate regular status updates, they actively manage expectations with all involved parties from team members right up to executives, and they work tirelessly to keep everyone aligned and informed throughout the project's life cycle.
That sounds like a truly demanding role. Requires immense focus, diligence on execution for their specific project. But you mentioned something intriguing earlier about an execution wall that even the most skilled PMs hit. What exactly does that look like in a real organization? And why is it such a significant, often hidden hurdle for leaders trying to optimize their company?
Right, that wall. It isn't a technical challenge. It's not about a lack of individual PM skill. It's profoundly structural. Project managers get stalled not because of their own efforts, but because they're battling systemic organizational chaos. Instead of focusing on actual project delivery, they find themselves constantly juggling bespoke processes for every new initiative. They're not operating within a unified, clear organizational approach. Imagine like a talented chef trying to cook in a kitchen where every ingredient is in a different place each day, and every tool is unique to a single recipe. It's exhausting and inefficient.
Impossible to get into a rhythm.
Exactly. And the most striking symptom of this, and a massive drain on executive time, is that leadership teams often spend, and this number is staggering, 20 hours per week.
20 hours?
20 hours, almost half a typical work week, just trying to reconcile 15 different project update formats coming in from various teams. I've literally seen CEOs with a dozen different spreadsheets open, trying to make sense of conflicting data. That's time that should absolutely be steering strategy, making high-level decisions, identifying new opportunities, not chasing disparate updates, and trying to make sense of inconsistent data.
Wow. Okay, so why? Why does this happen? It seems so inefficient.
It is incredibly inefficient. And the answer really reveals a critical organizational gap. Fewer than 1 in 4 organizations actually enforce consistent project management practices enterprise-wide.
Only 1 in 4.
Think about that for a moment. Fewer than 1 in 4. This means that pretty much every single PM and every team ends up reinventing their own process, creating their own templates, developing their own unique reporting methods. This fragmented ad hoc approach creates that massive drain on productivity we talked about. It incurs significant hidden costs through rework and delays. And it produces this pervasive lack of real-time visibility that most leaders don't even realize they're incurring. It's like having, 100 different teams trying to build their own unique piece of a puzzle without a master blueprint or any central coordinator for the whole thing.
So if the PM is managing the individual project, that single par on the road, the PMO, using your analogy, is managing the entire system of projects, that whole road network. How exactly does it do that? What's its domain? And how does it bring order to that potential chaos you just described?
Precisely. A PMO is that enterprise function that transforms those fragmented, isolated, one-off project efforts into a unified, strategically aligned discipline across the entire organization. While individual project managers focus intently on delivering single projects, the what and when for their specific car. The PMO owns the overarching how, the broader when, and the critical why of all projects. It ensures they uphold consistent standards, deliver real business value, and can scale predictably as the organization grows. Its scope is truly enterprise-wide and structural. So how does it do it? Firstly, the PMO establishes centralized authority. What this means is it defines and enforces enterprise-wide processes for everything, from risk management frameworks to change control procedures, quality assurance guidelines, and standardized reporting templates. This creates a single source of truth and a common language for project execution across all departments. No more guesswork.
A common playbook, essentially.
Exactly, a common playbook. Secondly, it provides crucial portfolio oversight. This is where the strategic alignment really crystallizes. The PMO prioritizes investments against the organization's overarching strategic objectives. It balances the company's capacity, its appetite for risk, and the potential return on investment for all proposed and ongoing projects. They're the ones making sure you're investing in the right projects, not just executing any project that comes along.
So they're making sure the cars are actually heading towards the company's main destination.
Precisely. And thirdly, it builds a robust governance backbone. This involves providing the essential forums and defining the clear decision rights. Everything from steering committees that guide major initiatives to change control boards that manage scope shifts. This keeps projects not just on track, but aligned with top-level directives and agile enough to pivot when strategy demands it.
That really does paint a picture of a system, not just a collection of projects. But, okay, for a leader thinking about ROI, the bottom line impact, how do these PMO functions translate into concrete, measurable business value? What's the real quantifiable impact that makes a PMO a strategic investment rather than just an overhead cost?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the data is, frankly, unequivocal. Without a properly empowered PMO, that structural chaos we talked about doesn't just make project management harder. It actively erodes both individual PM effectiveness and overall organizational performance. For any leader, understanding these quantifiable impacts is absolutely key to seeing the PMO not as overhead, but as a value accelerator. A high-impact PMO delivers value primarily in three core areas: predictable strategic execution, significant cost savings and risk reduction, and profound improvements in organizational efficiency and agility. Let's break those down.
Okay, predictable execution first.
Right. Predictable strategic execution. First, wasted leadership time. We keep coming back to this because it's such a pervasive, costly issue. Executives spending 20 hours a week reconciling inconsistent reports. Imagine reclaiming that time. The strategic initiatives, market analysis, or innovation that could be pursued. A PMO eliminates this drain by providing unified, real-time insights. Second, higher project success rates. We touched on this. Studies consistently show only about 56% of projects succeed without a PMO versus a significantly higher 65% when one is in place. That's nearly a 10% jump in success just by having a PMO. For an organization running dozens, maybe hundreds of projects, that's a massive difference in realized value and avoided costs. This predictability enables strategic planning with much greater confidence.
A 10% bump is huge when you multiply it across a portfolio.
Absolutely huge. Next, let's consider significant cost savings and risk reduction. Escalating costs and rework. Organizations without a functioning PMO lose, on average, over $1.2 million annually just to rework, fixing mistakes, redoing tasks, correcting misaligned governance that could have been avoided with proper oversight. This invisible tax directly hits your profitability. Reduced operational risk. Poor project performance costs the global economy nearly $2 trillion each year. That's about 9.9% of every dollar spent on projects. A PMO's standardized risk frameworks catch issues early, dramatically slashing rework and preventing minor cost overruns from ballooning into multi-million-dollar disasters.
So it's a direct hit to the bottom line if you don't have one.
Absolutely. And finally, a PMO drives profound improvements in organizational efficiency and agility. Meeting overload. Companies without a PMO hold, on average, 30% more status meetings. Think about the cumulative impact of that on productivity, on morale, the sheer drain on your most valuable resources, time and attention. A PMO streamlines communication, making it more effective and less time-consuming. Enhanced resource utilization. Centralized capacity planning and standardized templates drive massive efficiencies. We saw a case study from US KOIM. They achieved a remarkable 10% productivity gain simply by adopting a PMO's disciplined planning and reporting processes. That's more output, more value, with the same resources.
So essentially what you're saying is it's about transforming chaos into capital, freeing up resources, freeing up strategic focus that might otherwise be just tied up in firefighting and endless reconciliation meetings. It really sounds like an investment that pays for itself many times over by making the entire organization more predictable, more efficient.
It's exactly. The bottom line is crystal clear. A PMO isn't overhead. It's a strategic execution engine. It transforms that fragmented project activity into predictable strategic outcomes. Skipping it or underpowering your PMO, it doesn't save you money. It leaves hidden costs, quietly draining time, money, and your competitive edge, often without you even realizing the full extent of the leakage until it's really too late. It truly is an investment in predictable growth and sustained strategic delivery.
Okay, you mentioned earlier that a PMO isn't always just one thing, that it comes in many shapes and sizes. This feels incredibly important for any executive or VP listening, trying to figure out what might fit their organization's unique needs, its culture, its current maturity level. Can you break down the different forms it can take, both in terms of, where it sits in the org chart and how it actually operates?
Absolutely. This is critical because PMOs vary greatly, not just by their organizational scope where they sit, but also by the level of control or support they exert, how they influence day-to-day work. It's crucial to understand these distinctions to implement a PMO that truly serves your specific strategic objectives, not just some generic model you read about. Let's start by looking at a PMO's scope and level of oversight within the organization. Where did it live? First, you have the enterprise PMO, EPMO. This is the highest level. It oversees programs and projects across the entire organization, aligning all delivery directly with the C-suite's overarching strategy. All departmental or functional PMOs, like an IT PMO or maybe a marketing PMO, would typically roll up into this central office. The EPMO sets the organization-wide governance, standards, and reporting frameworks. Then there's the departmental or business unit PMO. This one's embedded within a specific function like IT, marketing, R&D, or finance. Its primary role is to align project delivery to that department's specific goals while usually feeding status and metrics upstream to an enterprise PMO, if one exists. You can also have a portfolio PMO. This type focuses specifically on selecting, prioritizing, and balancing the entire mix of projects and programs to maximize strategic ROI for the organization. This could be a standalone PMO or maybe a specialized function within a broader enterprise PMO portfolio management discipline. Its main job is ensuring you're working on the right things at the right time.
Making sure the investments align with strategy.
Exactly. Then there's the program PMO. This one's dedicated to one or more related programs. Now remember, a program isn't just a single project. It's a master initiative made up of several interconnected projects, all aimed at one larger, overarching strategic outcome, like launching an entirely new product line or implementing a new ERP system enterprise-wide. This PMO's role is to ensure consistent governance, proper benefit realization, and effective stakeholder alignment within that specific group of interdependent efforts. And finally, there's the project PMO. This is usually a lighter weight office, often supporting just a single, high-visibility, or maybe exceptionally complex project. It typically handles day-to-day reporting, risk tracking, and change control processes for that specific, singular effort, just to ensure its successful completion.
Okay, that covers where a PMO sits in the structure, which is vital for understanding its mandate and reach. But how does it actually operate day to day? What are the different flavors of influence that a PMO can exert? From being very hands-on to maybe more advisory. For a leader trying to introduce structure without stifling agility, this distinction feels particularly important.
You've hit on a really crucial point there about influence and operational style. Each scope of PMO we just discussed can operate under one of these fundamental flavors or influence models, and these are determined by how prescriptive or hands-on it is in its approach. First is the supportive PMO. This is often the starting point for many organizations. It provides templates, shares best practices, offers on-demand expertise, maybe runs training sections. Compliance here is typically voluntary and advisory. Use this model to gently introduce structure and consistent practices, especially in organizations with early project management maturity, or maybe in lower risk environments where you want to foster adoption rather than force it down people's throats.
Kind of easing people into it.
Exactly, building buy-in. Then you have the controlling PMO. This is a definite step up in authority. It actively enforces the adoption of specific methodologies, templates, governance rules, and it requires regular conformance reviews or audits. This model is ideal when you really need to rein in processes across different teams. Maybe after rapid growth has introduced significant chaos or inconsistency, and a stricter hand is needed to standardize things quickly. Next is the directive PMO. This is the most hands-on model. It directly assigns PMO staff resources, like project managers, to projects or programs. In this model, the PMO often effectively owns the delivery itself, guaranteeing consistent practices across all efforts. This is typically reserved for mission-critical transformations, or perhaps in highly regulated industries where consistency, professionalism, and absolute adherence to standards are paramount.
So they're actually putting their own people on the projects.
Right, taking direct control. Then there's the managing PMO. This flavor emphasizes governance, training, standardized processes, and centralized reporting. PMO managers in this model actively govern projects and work to remove obstacles for the project managers executing the work. This is often implemented when executive sponsors demand more centralized control and a more hands-on oversight approach across the portfolio. You also see the consulting coaching PMO. This type focuses heavily on mentoring project managers and their teams through best practices. It provides process guidance, maybe runs ongoing coaching programs. Its primary goal is to build long-term project management capability and maturity within the organization over time, fostering a culture of continuous improvement and self-sufficiency.
Building internal capability.
Precisely. And finally, there's the project repository PMO. This one primarily maintains a growing library of approved templates, methodologies, standards, and tools. This PMO continually tests, refines, and updates its repository items, making sure every PM uses the latest best practices and has a single, reliable source of truth for all project artifacts. It becomes the central go-to knowledge hub. Now, it's really important to note that, in practice, a PMO will frequently blend characteristics from multiple models, but it should always have one dominant flavor that truly matches your current organizational maturity and your key business priorities right now. For instance, it's often recommended, as you suggested, to start with a supportive PMO to build credibility and foster adoption, then maybe move to a controlling model as governance needs increase, and only then consider a directive model if organizational governance needs and the PMO's credibility grow significantly. Making this strategic choice about the PMO's flavor is absolutely critical for its success and, importantly, its acceptance within the organization.
Okay, this all sounds like the PMO provides the essential scaffolding, the infrastructure for project managers to truly excel. It shifts them from fighting those structural fires we talked about to really focusing on delivering value. How exactly do PMs and a well-functioning PMO work hand in hand to achieve this powerful synergy? What does that daily collaboration actually look like on the ground?
That's exactly the right way to think about it, synergy. A well-functioning PMO doesn't just create rules or enforce discipline from on high. It truly empowers project managers. It gives them the structure, the right tools, the critical data, and importantly, the strategic context they need to excel. It fundamentally shifts their energy away from administrative overhead and reactive problem-solving towards high-value execution and strategic impact. Here's how that crucial collaboration typically unfolds. Firstly, through structured planning and historical insights. The PMO acts as the keeper of organizational knowledge, right? It maintains a centralized project repository, storing valuable assets like past project charters, detailed risk registers, issue logs, and crucially, lessons learned from previous initiatives.
So PMs aren't starting from scratch every time.
Exactly. They don't have to reinvent the wheel on every new project. Instead of hunting for past artifacts or building everything from the ground up, they can leverage proven templates and tap into past data analytics to build robust, informed plans faster and more effectively. They benefit from the collective experience of the organization. Secondly, via consistent reporting and dashboards. This is a huge game changer for both PMs and leadership. Instead of individual project managers manually assembling disparate status updates every week or month.
That nightmare 20 hours a week thing.
Right, avoiding that. The PMO defines clear, consistent reporting cadences, maybe distinguishing between automated data pulls and manual updates, identifies authoritative data sources, and delivers unified dashboards tailored precisely to stakeholder needs. Imagine a PM who no longer spends their Friday afternoon manually compiling reports, but instead gets instant access to live, pre-formatted dashboards.
That frees up so much time.
Immense amounts of time. It frees project managers from the time-consuming and often frustrating task of reconciling multiple spreadsheets or slide decks. And simultaneously, it gives leadership that real-time, consolidated visibility into schedule health, budget variance, critical risk trends across the entire portfolio. This allows them to make informed decisions quickly, based on reliable, consistent data. Thirdly, in terms of strategic alignment and value tracking. Through its portfolio management function, the PMO directly connects those individual projects back to the overarching business goals. It rigorously prioritizes initiatives based on clear criteria: expected ROI, the organization's risk appetite, strategic fit. This provides project managers with immense clarity on how their specific deliverables contribute to and drive broader organizational outcomes. They understand they're not just aiming for on time and on budget, but that their work is truly impactful and strategically aligned, directly contributing to the company's vision. It gives their work more meaning.
Connects the dots for them.
Precisely. Fourthly, through process simplification and governance. By standardizing critical processes like those enterprise-wide risk management frameworks, consistent change control procedures, clear quality gates, the PMO systematically removes common procedural roadblocks and ambiguities. Project managers then spend less time firefighting bespoke governance questions or navigating unclear approval paths. Instead, they can focus more of their energy on managing execution, confident in the knowledge that there's a shared playbook and a clear established escalation path when issues inevitably arise. This clarity reduces friction, speeds up delivery, and finally, a forward-thinking PMO embraces AI-enabled project delivery. In today's rapidly evolving AI-driven world, a sophisticated PMO actively pilots and scales intelligent tools. These tools can automate mundane forecasting tasks. They can surface early risk signals long before they become critical. They can generate predictive dashboards offering forward-looking insights. Project managers directly benefit from these data-driven insights, allowing them to focus their valuable time on complex problem-solving, critical decision-making, and proactive management, rather than tedious data collection and manual analysis. It truly elevates the role of the project manager from task manager to strategic executor.
So ultimately, it's about shifting the PM's energy away from those administrative hurdles and reactive firefighting towards high-value execution and proactive strategic decision-making. It really elevates their role and their impact within the organization, makes them more effective, more strategic.
That's the core benefit, absolutely.
Okay. Despite all these clear benefits and the compelling synergy we've just discussed, many organizations, perhaps yours listening right now, still hesitate. They hesitate to launch or fully empower a PMO. And this is often because of these persistent myths and misconceptions that circulate, particularly within leadership circles. Let's tackle some of these head on, because often the misconception itself masks the very benefit a well-designed PMO is engineered to deliver. I imagine one of the first things leaders might think is, my team is already swamped. Adding a PMO just sounds like more work, more bureaucracy. How do you respond to that immediate, very understandable concern?
That's a critical point, and yes, it's probably one of the most pervasive myths out there. Let's address these common fears directly, because getting past them is key. We can group them into categories. Myth category 1, the PMO as a bureaucracy builder. So, myth 1, a PMO just adds bureaucracy and stifles innovation. Reality, a well-designed PMO does exactly the opposite. It carefully balances necessary oversight with crucial flexibility. Look, too little structure, as we discussed, leads to chaos, and that truly stifles innovation by bogging down teams in constant reactive firefighting. But yes, too much structure, turning the PMO into a rigid policeman, can indeed overburden teams and cause failure. That's a real risk if it's poorly implemented. Reality, the sweet spot in what a best practice PMO aims for is often a controlling or consulting model that standardizes only the absolutely necessary processes. This actually frees PMs for delivery and creativity by giving them a clear, predictable framework to operate within. It allows them to focus on the innovative aspects of their work. It's about smart structure, not stifling rules.
Right, structure that enables, not hinders.
Exactly, and related to that is myth 9, a PMO kills agility. Reality. This is another common misconception, especially in today's agile-focused world. But modern effective PMOs embed adaptive governance, not rigid command and control. By leveraging concepts like sprint-based planning, rolling wave roadmaps which are iterative, high-level plans that adapt as you learn more, and lightweight guardrails, which are flexible boundaries rather than strict rules, they actually accelerate delivery. Reality. Organizations with agile-aligned PMOs report up to 30% faster time to market and 25% fewer disruptive scope changes. This proves that the right structure fuels, rather than hinders, innovation and rapid iteration. It supports agility, doesn't kill it.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about being lean and adaptive, not creating unnecessary layers of approval. Okay, another common worry, especially for leaders looking at the budget line, is that a PMO is just an overhead cost, and worse, that they often fail anyway. What's the truth behind that perception?
Right. That leads us neatly into the next category of myths. Myth category 2, the PMO as an expensive ephemeral overhead. Myth 2, it's just overhead most PMOs shut down within a few years. Reality. Okay, it's true that PMOs do face high early attrition rates. The stats are stark. 25% close within year one, 50% by year two, and a staggering 75% by year three. However, this happens almost exclusively when they lack consistent executive sponsorship or fail to consistently demonstrate measurable value. Reality. Those that endure, the successful ones, are those that continuously capture benefits, actively align themselves to evolving organizational strategy, and constantly evolve their own services to meet changing business needs. Cutting a PMO without addressing its fundamental misalignment or lack of value simply returns your organization to fragmented delivery and all the hidden costs that come with it. It's a return to square one, not a solution. It's fixing the reason for failure, not abandoning the concept.
So failure isn't inherent. It's usually due to poor implementation or lack of support.
Precisely, which connects to myth 8. It's just a fancy buzzword, no real impact. Reality. This is perhaps the most dangerous myth, especially for executives focused on results. As we discussed earlier, without a functioning PMO, organizations are losing 20 hours per week of leadership time reconciling updates. They're wasting over $1.2 million annually on rework and misaligned governance. They're holding 30% more status meetings. Reality. That buzzword is in fact the essential execution engine that transforms fragmented project activity into predictable strategic outcomes. Skipping it or underpowering it leaves millions on the table and puts you at a significant strategic disadvantage. You really do skip it at your own peril. Myth 10. Building a PMO means buying expensive software. Reality. This is a common misconception. A PMO's true value comes first and foremost from process discipline and strong governance, not from expensive, complex tools. Most successful PMOs actually launch using existing readily available platforms. Think standard tools like Excel, SharePoint, maybe simple dashboard widgets. Reality. They then only invest in complex enterprise solutions once their frameworks are proven and their needs are clearly defined. In fact, data shows 62% of PMOs delay merger software purchases until after they've standardized their processes. This keeps initial overhead minimal and ensures the technology serves the process, not the other way around. Process first, tools second.
Okay, that definitely dispels the idea that it's some transient, automatically costly experiment. So what about the perception that it's only for huge, established enterprises, or that really experienced teams don't need that kind of oversight?
Yes, these fall under our third myth category, myth category 3. The PMO as unnecessary or only for the elite. Myth 3. We're a small team, PMOs are only for large enterprises. Reality. This couldn't be further from the truth. PMO's scope and scale are highly adaptable to organizational size and need. A departmental PMO, or even a PMO of one, literally a single person acting as the PMO lead, can deliver immediate, tangible value by providing core templates, centralized reporting, and light-touch governance. Reality. It's not about bloating headcount. It's about strategically standardizing the right practices, regardless of how many people are in your organization. The need for structure scales with complexity and growth, not just sheer size. Even small, fast-growing companies hit these pain points. Myth 4. Our PMs are experienced. They don't need oversight. Reality. Even veteran, highly experienced project managers struggle when faced with inconsistent tools, a lack of shared processes, and ad hoc approaches across the organization. A PMO doesn't provide oversight in a punitive micromanaging sense. It enhances PM effectiveness. It offers proven templates, consolidated risk logs, a unified data source, maybe guided mentoring programs. Reality. This means seasoned PMs spend less time reinventing wheels or searching for information and more time on high-value strategic execution. It actually makes good PMs even better by giving them a clearer, more supported playing field to operate on.
It empowers them rather than restricts them.
Exactly, it removes friction. And relatedly, myth 12. A PMO duplicates what my PMs or portfolio managers already do. Reality. No single project manager or even a dedicated portfolio manager focused on a specific area can realistically provide enterprise-wide prioritization, comprehensive benefits realization, tracking across all initiatives, centralized capacity planning across all departments, and unified cross-project KPI consolidation. It's just too broad a scope. Remember the stats. Organizations with mature PMOs achieve a 65% project success rate compared to just 37% for those with low maturity PMOs. This clearly demonstrates the unique high-level oversight and strategic coordination that PMO brings that no individual role can replicate. It's about adding a layer of strategic coordination and enterprise view, not redundant individual tasks. Myth 13. PMOs are only for regulated or highly structured industries. Reality. Mature PMOs drive performance and value in every sector. The need for predictable delivery and strategic alignment isn't industry-specific. In fact, organizations that standardize project management practices across tech, services, healthcare, manufacturing, you name it, report a 92% success rate on key objectives. Reality. Modern PMOs are highly adaptable. They tailor their governance to fit agile teams, startups, and complex enterprise environments alike. They consistently deliver faster time to market and smarter resource utilization regardless of the industry context.
So what you're really saying across all these myths is that many of them boil down to a fear of rigidity or maybe a misunderstanding of scale. But a well-designed PMO is actually the antidote to chaos and inefficiency, not the cause. It empowers, it clarifies, and it focuses the organization.
Exactly. That's the core message. The ultimate goal is to create predictable, repeatable success, and that's precisely what a well-implemented PMO enables.
Okay, with those myths thoroughly debunked, let's circle back and really focus on the hard numbers. The concrete evidence that speaks directly to executives and VPs who are evaluating if a PMO is truly worth the investment, worth the effort. What are the clear, quantifiable gains? How does a PMO transform what might feel like just fragmented project activity into a predictable, strategic engine that demonstrably drives the business forward?
Right. For any leader focused squarely on the bottom line and strategic growth, a high-impact PMO is not a luxury item. It's a measurable value accelerator. It impacts every level of the organization. It provides direct, quantifiable outcomes that hit profitability, efficiency, and market responsiveness. Fundamentally, a PMO drives value by delivering predictable strategic execution, by generating significant cost savings and risk reduction, and by fostering profound operational efficiency and organizational learning. Let's quantify each of those.
Okay, let's start with predictable execution again, but with the numbers.
Right. Predictable strategic execution. First, strategic alignment and prioritization. By explicitly linking every single initiative back to corporate objectives, PMOs ensure that precious resources, time, money, people, are focused on the highest value work. Organizations that embed strategic portfolio management report significantly more efficient resource allocation and demonstrate sustained growth. Why? Because every dollar and every hour is aimed squarely at the right targets, not just random busy work. Second, measurable delivery and ROI. High-performing PMOs speak the language of results. Through robust key performance indicators, KPIs, and maybe objective and key results, OKRs, frameworks, they steer projects to deliver on budget 61% of the time and on schedule 59% of the time. Now, those numbers might not sound perfect, but they are significantly higher than the rates typically achieved without PMO oversight. This directly translates to more projects completed successfully and more value realized from your investments. Third, executive agility and real-time visibility. Those automated dashboards and unified KPIs we talked about. They eliminate the tiresome, time-consuming status meeting slog. PMOs equip leadership with live, accurate insights into their entire project portfolio. This frees executives to focus their energy on steering strategy, making timely course corrections and identifying new opportunities, instead of wasting valuable time chasing updates and trying to make sense of fragmented, unreliable data. Fourth, benefits realization management. This is a big one. Beyond just delivering projects on time and budget, top-tier PMOs take ownership of benefits tracking. This means actually measuring whether projects deliver on their promised ROI and strategic objectives after implementation. Organizations with high benefits realization maturity achieve a stunning 92% overall project success rate, compared to a mere 33% for underperformers. This is about ensuring your investments truly pay off, not just ticking a box that a project is done.
So on this point, it's really about ensuring every initiative truly moves the strategic needle forward, giving leaders that clear, real-time view, and critically ensuring projects actually deliver on their promised value after they launch. It's about making sure your investments are smart, visible, and impactful.
Precisely put. Now, let's look at the second area. How PMOs generate significant cost savings and risk reduction. The numbers here are compelling. Risk mitigation and cost control. Remember that staggering figure? Poor project performance costs the global economy nearly $2 trillion each year, representing about 9.9% of every dollar spent on projects. A PMO's standardized risk frameworks catch issues early, dramatically slashing rework costs and preventing minor cost overruns from ballooning into multi-million-dollar problems before they severely impact your P&L. Think of it as a crucial insurance policy against preventable waste, operational efficiency, and cost savings. Ineffective project management can waste $97 million for every $1 billion invested. That's nearly 10% of your capital, through delays, scope creep, and duplicated effort. By enforcing consistent processes and systematically eliminating these inefficiencies, PMOs reclaim that lost spend and convert it directly into bottom-line impact. This is directly quantifiable money back in the bank. As governance and compliance assurance, we saw that real-world case study of a government agency. They reduced budget overruns by 20% and improved delivery timelines by 30% within the first year of PMO implementation. This is compelling proof that robust, Standardized governance frameworks pay significant dividends, particularly in regulated environments where non-compliance costs can be absolutely astronomical.
Wow, that's a staggering amount of potential savings and risk reduction just sitting there. For many organizations, that's capital they're just letting slip away, maybe without even fully realizing it. Does it ever feel like organizations just sort of accept this chaos as the cost of doing business without truly quantifying what it's costing them?
Oh, all too often, yes. The pain is felt, but not always measured or attributed correctly. Which brings us to the third key area where PMOs deliver tangible value: profound operational efficiency and organizational learning, resource utilization and productivity. Centralized capacity planning and standardized templates drive massive efficiencies. We mentioned US Co-IM achieving a 10% productivity gain simply by adopting PMO planning and reporting. Imagine that kind of gain across your entire workforce, freeing up capacity for innovation, for growth, for tackling new challenges. Stakeholder engagement and transparency. By institutionalizing clear two-way information flows, PMOs keep executives and project teams aligned. They surface constraints and potential roadblocks early, building a foundation of trust and predictability. Projects with formal communication protocols experience 25% fewer alignment issues, saving countless hours and preventing costly misunderstandings down the line. Continuous improvement and maturity. Through regular maturity assessments and institutionalized lessons learned loops, PMOs enable organizations to evolve. They move from ad hoc, reactive delivery towards optimized, proactive project execution. Organizations that climb this maturity curve see projects consistently aligned to strategy, turning gradual improvements into sustained competitive advantage and fostering a true culture of execution excellence. Innovation and digital transformation enabler. AI-powered task automation is rapidly reshaping PMOs. It's freeing teams from repetitive work so they can focus on higher-value strategic tasks. Gartner predicts that 80% of project management tasks will be run by AI by 2030. This fundamentally shifts PMOs from purely control roles to becoming innovation accelerators, helping you leverage cutting-edge technology effectively across your portfolio. Organizational learning and knowledge management. Capturing and reusing lessons learned is the cornerstone of any learning organization, right? Yet, stats show only 31% of companies have a system to store those lessons for future projects, and a mere 44% actually apply them in planning new ones. A PMO fills this critical gap, ensuring that every project contributes to a growing body of organizational knowledge, driving continuous performance gains and helping you avoid repeating costly mistakes. So, the bottom line is clear and consistently reinforced by data. A PMO isn't a cost center. It's a profound value accelerator. From cutting multi-million-dollar waste to boosting time to market to ensuring every project delivers real, measurable ROI, a strategically built and properly empowered PMO delivers clear, quantifiable gains that directly impact your organization's competitiveness and its long-term success.
Sometimes the best way to really truly grasp a complex, multifaceted concept like the PMO's function is through a powerful analogy, something visual. Let's try a few more to help you, the listener, really visualize its crucial role within an organization.
Absolutely. Analogies are great for making the abstract concrete and memorable. Okay, first let's revisit the air traffic control tower. Imagine that bustling airport again. Dozens of planes on final approach or preparing for takeoff. Project managers are the pilots, right? Each flying their assigned aircraft safely to the runway. Their focus is solely on their flight, their specific destination. The PMO in this scenario is air traffic control. It manages the entire flight schedule, coordinates holding patterns, dictates landing order, oversees runway availability. Its critical job is to keep all arrivals and departures deconflicted, on time, and aligned to the bigger traffic flow of the entire airport. This analogy perfectly drives home the PMO's role in governance, enforcing standardized processes and using real-time dashboards to prevent those mid-air collisions, which, in a business context, are your project overruns, your resource conflicts, your strategic misalignments.
Keeping everything flowing smoothly and safely.
Exactly. Okay, next, let's consider the orchestra conductor. Visualize a conductor standing before a large orchestra. You've got the various sections: strings, woodwinds, brass, percussion, each with their own sheet music, their own part to play. Project managers are your section leaders, maybe the first violin or the lead trumpet. They're guiding their individual group through their specific musical score. They're part of the composition. The PMO is the conductor. The conductor holds the master score, sets the tempo for the entire piece, balances the volume and emphasis of each section, and cues the entries for every instrument, ensuring they come in at the right time. They ensure every section plays in harmony and follows the same interpretation, the same methodology, the same vision for the overall performance. This analogy powerfully illustrates how standardized templates, defined methodologies, and a consistent cadence turn dozens of talented soloists or fragmented project teams into a cohesive, high-performing organizational symphony, all playing the same tune, strategically aligned.
I like that one, turning noise into music.
Precisely. And finally, let's think about the City Planning Commission. Imagine a city hall chamber. There's a large map of the metropolis on the wall. City planners are at their desks. Maybe representatives from various construction companies are gathered around. Project managers are your individual contractors, each building one specific neighborhood, maybe a new office tower, or a particular piece of infrastructure, following the permit they've been issued. The PMO is the City Planning Commission. This commission sets the zoning laws. Those are your governance standards. They issue building permits. Those are like your project charters. They enforce building codes that represents your quality and change control processes. And crucially, they maintain the city master plan that's your organization's strategic portfolio roadmap. They balance all the residential, commercial, and infrastructure projects to optimize things like traffic flow, resource allocation, like utilities and workforce, and tax revenue, which translates directly to strategic alignment, capacity planning, and ROI in a business context. Just as a city without a planning commission devolves into ad hoc construction, leading inevitably to gridlock, safety hazards, budget overruns, and a generally chaotic environment, a business without an empowered PMO ultimately ends up with fragmented projects, severe resource conflicts, stalled strategic decisions, preventing true, orderly, sustainable growth.
Those analogies really do paint a vivid picture of the PMO's function, making it incredibly clear. But okay, for the executives and VPs listening who need tangible proof, for those who need to see the rubber meet the road, so to speak, do you have any specific examples? Any real-world case studies that illustrate the stark difference a properly empowered PMO makes in practice? Numbers, outcomes.
Absolutely. These case studies turn what might sound theoretical into clear, demonstrable results. They really illustrate how PMOs transform those siloed, high-risk environments into strategic, high-performing engines. Let's start with the Government Infrastructure Agency. Without a PMO, projects were managed entirely in silos. There was no centralized governance, no consistent practices. Priorities were constantly shifting and misaligned. Decision rights were unclear, leading to bottlenecks. And visibility into project status was so poor that projects routinely ran late and significantly over budget. It was an environment of constant unpleasant surprises and reactive firefighting, where progress was basically a mystery until it was way too late to fix problems cheaply. With a PMO, the agency stood up a PMO specifically charged with standardizing policies, creating a centralized reporting system using common tools, and dramatically improving resource allocation across all their initiatives. Within just 12 months, a pretty short time frame, the results were transformative. They saw a 30% reduction in schedule delays, a 25% lower rate of cost overruns, and perhaps most tellingly for stakeholder confidence, satisfaction scores rose by a remarkable 40%. That's direct evidence of improved efficiency, cost control, and a dramatic increase in trust and transparency.
Those are significant improvements in just 1 year.
Huge improvements. Now let's look at ROI improvements at XYZ Corp. This is a classic example, focusing on direct financial impact.
Yeah.
Before the PMO, only 60% of their projects were succeeding on time and within budget. This translated directly to a staggering $700,000 in documented losses just from failed initiatives alone in a given period. Imagine that capital just evaporating into thin air. After the PMO, a well-managed PMO focused on consistent methodology and oversight lifted their project success rate to an impressive 85%. This led to direct savings of $700,000 just from having fewer project failures. Plus, they realized an additional $900,000 through overall efficiency gains across their portfolio, things like better resource use, less rework. That's a total of $1.6 million in measurable value generated over 3 years, purely attributable to the PMO's influence. This isn't just about efficiency, it's about making and saving significantly more money.
$1.6 million straight to the bottom line. That's compelling.
Very compelling. Another great example is Texas Health Resources. The challenge, pre-PMO. This large healthcare organization had absolutely no unified way to view or prioritize roughly 80 concurrent IT projects. Spending and resource use went largely untracked across these initiatives, and strategic high-value projects often found themselves competing for resources and attention with smaller tactical quick fixes based on who shouted loudest, not necessarily what was most important for the business long-term. It was essentially a strategic free-for-all, the PMO impact. They made a significant investment and built a 26-person PMO. This PMO delivered what they call one keyhole into all IT projects, a single, transparent, consolidated view. This immediately enabled true strategic prioritization based on data, transparent spending, and hour tracking across all IT efforts, and facilitated a crucial cultural shift towards focusing on high-value initiatives over reactive, ad hoc work. Their IT function transformed into a true strategic partner, directly contributing to the organization's core mission rather than just responding to disparate demands.
So it brought strategic clarity and control to a complex environment.
Precisely. And for those leaders concerned about the myth that PMOs often fail, here's a fascinating case of a broken PMO revived in 90 days. This really highlights that even if a PMO struggles initially, it can be turned around with the right focus and executive support. The situation. An existing enterprise PMO had completely lost credibility. Project managers were overloaded, stressed, and burning out. Governance meetings felt pointless, just going through the motions. And crucially, executives no longer trusted the data they were receiving from the PMO. It was a PMO in name only, draining resources without delivering value, leading to widespread cynicism and resistance. The turnaround. They executed a rapid, focused PMO overhaul. This involved redefining its core charter to align with current business needs, re-engaging key executive sponsors to ensure buy-in, and reestablishing clear, effective governance cadences that people actually valued. Within a remarkable 3 months, stakeholder trust was fully restored. There was a 50% drop in PM burnout and attrition, a massive win for talent retention and morale. And decision-making time across the portfolio was cut in half, thanks to clear, actionable reporting and defined escalation paths.
So even a failing PMO isn't a lost cause if you address the root issues.
Absolutely. These real-world examples powerfully underscore the fundamental difference between that fragmented reactive project work, which drains resources, kills morale, and stifles growth, and a disciplined strategic delivery engine, which a properly empowered PMO provides. Whether you're launching a PMO for the first time or perhaps reviving a struggling one, the right approach, with clear goals and strong sponsorship, consistently delivers measurable improvements in on-time delivery, critical cost control, and ultimately executive confidence in your organization's ability to execute its strategy effectively.
Okay, this is where it gets really interesting, I think, for a leader navigating organizational growth right now. You've talked about how ad hoc project practices eventually buckle under the weight of increasing growth and complexity. What does that buckling actually feel like day to day for an executive? What are those hidden costs, that invisible drain on the organization if they don't act? Because often these costs are insidious, right? They're not immediately obvious on the P&L statement.
That's a critical strategic question. And you're right, the costs are often insidious. Waiting too long to stand up a PMO doesn't just delay getting better at project delivery. It actively amplifies those hidden costs, multiplies miscommunications across teams, and makes remediation far, far harder once the chaos becomes entrenched in the culture. For any leader, understanding these existing, often invisible costs is the absolute first step to recognizing that tipping point, that moment when action is needed. The costs you're likely already paying, even if you don't see them clearly, are significant and tangible. First, there's that pervasive leadership time wasted. We keep hammering this, but it's huge. Executives spending 20 hours per week, almost half their work week, just trying to reconcile disparate, inconsistent project updates instead of focusing on high-level strategy, market analysis, or building competitive advantage. This is a massive opportunity cost, a drain on your most valuable resource, executive focus and strategic thinking.
Time they can never get back.
Never. Second, you face escalating complexity. What was once manageable by tribal knowledge or informal hallway chats quickly becomes this tangled web of scope conflicts, unclear dependencies, and constant rework as your project count and team size grow. Imagine trying to coordinate a dozen different construction projects just by shouting across the street. It quickly becomes unmanageable. Third, you'll see entrenched fragmentation. Teams inevitably begin to cement their own individual workarounds for planning, reporting, and change control into the way we do things around here. This makes later attempts at standardization feel like an imposed disruption rather than a beneficial improvement. It creates these internal silos that become really hard to break down later.
Resistance to change builds up.
Exactly. And fourth, there's rising risk exposure. Those small misalignments, missed handoffs between teams, untracked project risks, inconsistent quality controls, they compound over time. They grow into major failures that are incredibly difficult and expensive to untangle, often only becoming visible once they've caused significant reputational or financial damage. These are the subtle, pervasive costs of inaction, the slow bleed that weakens the organization.
Those are compelling and, as you say, often hidden costs. So if a leader is listening right now, maybe nodding along thinking, is this my company? Have we hit this point? What are the absolute undeniable symptoms? The clear red flags waving, telling them it's really time to seriously consider establishing or empowering a PMO.
Recognizing these signs is crucial for proactive leadership. They often fall into a few key categories, acting as clear triggers. Category 1. Business growth and complexity thresholds, just sheer scale starting to cause pain. Revenue milestones. When your annual revenues climb past that $10, $20 million mark, the number and complexity of strategic initiatives typically multiply beyond what informal coordination can realistically handle. You're simply getting too big for ad hoc to work anymore. Headcount expansion. Once your total team size exceeds, say, 50, 100 employees, cross-departmental handoffs become the norm, not the exception. Without a centralized function to codify roles, responsibilities, and approval workflows, projects inevitably stall as people endlessly debate who owns what piece. Project volume surge. If you find yourself managing more than 5 significant concurrent projects, you're likely outpacing any single leader's or even a small team's capacity to track dependencies and resource needs effectively. Remember, those PMI studies found organizations running 10-plus active projects concurrently without a PMO saw their on-time delivery rate drop by a significant 30% compared to those with a PMO. That's a direct hit to performance. When one-off processes break down, you'll feel this when ad hoc tools lead to visible chaos, individual spreadsheets for project tracking, resulting in misaligned risk registers and conflicting status updates reaching executives. When inconsistent governance blocks innovation, some teams informally push through changes, while others get stuck waiting for formal board reviews, leading to duplicate work and stalled timelines. When knowledge silos emerge, every new project starts from scratch, wasting valuable time and repeating avoidable mistakes. Once you're consistently seeing these breakdowns, fixing the project chaos becomes exponentially harder without a structured PMO approach.
So size and volume themselves become triggers?
Absolutely. Then there's category 2, project portfolio overload and strategic misalignment. When the mix of projects becomes the problem. Too many parallel projects. We know 85% of PMs work on multiple projects. Beyond 5 concurrent efforts per PM, that juggling act becomes unmanageable without centralized oversight and prioritization. This directly leads to that 30% drop in on-time delivery rates for organizations running 10-plus active projects without formal portfolio management. You're spread too thin. Conflicting priorities and resource contention. This is huge. Resource management is the #1 obstacle for almost 48% of organizations. 67% of resource managers cite inadequate forecasting and conflicting priorities as their biggest impediments. When multiple teams constantly compete for the same critical skills or essential tools, bottlenecks form, tasks stall, and deadlines slip. Projects become slow, and PMs spend more time negotiating for resources than actually managing delivery. Strategic drift. Only 56% of strategic initiatives actually meet their original objectives, but projects explicitly aligned to strategy from the start are 57% more likely to succeed. Without a PMO actively managing that alignment, projects often drift away from corporate goals. Budget misalignment. Companies without a formal PMO often spend up to 20% of their total project budgets on redundant efforts or initiatives that provide very low strategic value. These alignment gaps erode both efficiency and your overall return on investment.
You're spending money, but not necessarily on the right things?
Precisely. Category 3. Resource strain and operational pressures. When the people and processes are showing signs of stress. Overbooked teams. We know 85% of PMs manage more than one project, and 23% of project failures stem directly from inadequate resource forecasting. Yet 75% of organizations still use basic spreadsheets for this critical forecasting, and over half, 51%, lack any formal process. This guarantees last-minute resource scrambles and delays. Poor resource management ranks as the #1 obstacle for 60% of organizations. It's a pervasive problem. Early warning signals in utilization data. Watch your dashboards for red flags. Things like sustained utilization consistently above 80% on critical roles, a sure precursor to burnout, or chronic underutilization maybe below 50% for specialists, meaning wasted potential. Repeated overtime requests across teams. Resource conflicts dominating status meetings instead of progress updates. These are clear signals of strain. Governance, risk, and compliance pressures. Fewer than 1 in 3 organizations, only 33%, have complete enterprise-wide risk management processes. The average non-compliance event costs $4 million or more, plus reputational damage. And share prices can tumble 4% within just 2 months of reporting a material weakness in controls. Ad hoc controls are a massive, often underestimated liability. PM and team frustration. A very clear sign is when administrative overload starts replacing value-add work for your project teams. You'll hear complaints about bureaucracy, endless meetings, unclear processes. This inevitably leads to high burnout indicators and increased turnover risk among your most valuable project talent. People leave frustrating environments.
Listening to your team's pain points is key here.
Absolutely. And finally, category 4, major triggers and strategic imperatives. Big events or strategic shifts that demand better coordination. Major transformation triggers. Things like mergers and acquisitions, which require integrating processes and systems, or large-scale IT or digital rollouts that absolutely require intense central coordination and oversight to succeed. These big bets often force the issue. Executive visibility and decision bottlenecks. When executives complain they can't get a clear picture, when manual status reconciliation delays crucial decisions or leads to uninformed strategic choices, that's a huge red flag that the current system isn't working for leadership. Innovation and digital transformation imperatives. When you realize you need a cohesive, data-driven backbone to effectively manage initiatives involving AI, automation, DevOps pipelines, or other complex digital transformations to drive future growth, a PMO becomes not just helpful, but essential for coordinated success.
Okay, we've covered the what, the how, the why, and the when. Now let's really crystallize the ultimate decision for you, the listener, maybe a CXO or VP, looking at your strategic roadmap for the next few years. You've painted a really compelling picture of the PMO's potential, but I'm curious, for a leader listening right now, what are the truly catastrophic risks, the profound costs of not acting, of just sticking with the status quo, maybe hoping things will somehow get better on their own? This feels like the true cost of that false savings mentality.
You're absolutely right to frame it as false savings. The cost of ignoring the need for structure. The cost of thinking you can somehow save money or effort by not investing in a properly empowered PMO is pervasive. It's often hidden, yes, but it's ultimately far, far more expensive than any investment in building that capability. It's like an invisible tax on your entire organization that relentlessly chips away at your efficiency, your agility, and your strategic advantage. Let's break down these really significant risks into 4 critical areas that should concern any leader. Risk 1, financial erosion and wasted capital. This hits the bottom line directly. The hidden financial drain is enormous. That invisible tax we talked about, rework, scope creep, duplicated efforts, is quantifiable and substantial. We've already discussed the staggering $1.2 million annually in documented losses for organizations without a functioning PMO, just due to rework and misaligned governance. And the opportunity cost of leadership time spent chasing status instead of driving growth. That's immense, potentially costing millions more in missed market opportunities or delayed strategic initiatives. It's a continuous, often unbudgeted leakage of capital, escalating operational risk. Regulatory failures, compliance breaches, audit findings, these become far more likely when controls are ad hoc and inconsistent across the organization. Remember, the average non-compliance event can cost you $4 million or more in direct fines and penalties, not to mention the legal fees and reputational repair. And a reported material weakness can cause your share price to tumble. A PMO proactively mitigates these risks, acting as a crucial defense against easily avoidable yet potentially crippling financial penalties.
So it's not just about losing money on individual projects anymore, but the broader financial health, stability, and even the legal standing of the entire organization are genuinely at risk if you ignore this.
Exactly. Which leads directly to risk 2, erosion of strategic alignment and stunted growth opportunities. Without a guiding portfolio function actively managing alignment, projects inevitably drift away from corporate goals. This leads directly to wasted investment on low-value initiatives that simply don't move the needle for your business. This translates into a lack of clear strategic direction for the entire organization as efforts become fragmented and uncoordinated. It's like having every department build its own separate, unconnected building without any overarching city plan. You end up with sprawl and inefficiency. You face very real missed growth and scaling opportunities. Without a PMO providing that coordination backbone, the organization fundamentally struggles with the inability to effectively onboard new products, enter new geographies smoothly, or manage major complex transformations effectively. Scaling efficiently, something every growing business needs to master, becomes a distant, painful dream rather than a predictable, manageable outcome. You simply can't grow effectively or predictably without this coordination, and there's a significant innovation penalty. A missing or ineffective PMO means no consistent lessons learned loop is established to fuel continuous improvement and organizational learning. Your teams are constantly forced into reinventing the wheel on every new tech rollout or digital initiative, wasting valuable time and significantly slowing down your ability to innovate, adapt to market changes, and stay ahead of competitors.
So if you're not growing efficiently, you're effectively falling behind. And this lack of structure, this constant struggle, it also sounds like it has a real tangible impact on your people, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Which brings us to risk 3, team burnout, talent drain, and internal chaos. Without consistent processes, clear support structures, and a unified framework to operate within, project managers are often forced into that exhausting hero culture trap. They find themselves constantly firefighting, reacting to endless problems instead of proactively planning and executing strategic work. This leads directly to high rates of burnout and increased attrition among your most valuable, experienced project talent. Good people leave because the environment becomes unsustainable and unrewarding. And when a formal, empowered PMO is absent, you often see informal shadow or road PMOs and process fragmentation emerge within individual departments or teams. These well-intentioned but uncoordinated shadow PMOs create their own local processes, templates, and reporting structures. This leads to organizational chaos and conflicting frameworks across the company. This scenario is often actually worse than having nothing at all, creating internal friction, massive inefficiencies, and constant battles as teams argue over whose process is right.
That sounds like a recipe for internal chaos, duplicated effort, and losing your best people purely out of frustration. And finally, what's the last major risk area?
Finally, and this can be incredibly damaging, we have risk 4, reputation damage and crippling crisis vulnerability. You face significant reputational and stakeholder damage. Inconsistent project delivery, missed deadlines, budget overruns, these things steadily undermine customer trust, damage critical partner relationships, and can severely impact your brand perception in the market. Recovering from a high-profile project failure, especially one that affects customers, can have a long, painful, and incredibly damaging tail, impacting future sales, partnerships, and your overall market standing. Your crisis response and change agility are severely hampered. During critical emergencies, think major market shifts, urgent M&A integrations, significant supply chain disruptions, or even cyber incidents. Only a PMO-backed organization with established processes and clear lines of communication can typically move decisively, coherently, and predictably. Without that structure, the organization remains reactive, slow, and uncoordinated in its response, often compounding the original crisis through fumbled execution. And underlying all of this is the fundamental truth about the false savings of skipping a PMO. The perceived short-term savings from avoiding headcount or maybe software licenses for a PMO evaporate very quickly when faced with the reality of rampant project overruns, expensive rework cycles, lost deals due to slow response, missed strategic opportunities, and all the hidden operational costs we've just detailed. It's a simple, stark ROI model. The cost to build and maintain a properly empowered PMO is profoundly dwarfed by the exponentially higher, continuous, and often hidden cost of continuing to operate without one. It's truly an investment that pays for itself many times over, often in ways leaders don't fully appreciate until they make the change. And underlying all of this is the fundamental truth about the false savings of skipping a PMO. The perceived short-term savings from avoiding headcount or maybe software licenses for a PMO evaporate very quickly when faced with the reality of rampant project overruns, expensive rework cycles, lost deals due to slow response, missed strategic opportunities, and all the hidden operational costs we've just detailed. It's a simple, stark ROI model. Hashtag outro.
Wow, what a deep dive into the project management office. We've gone from clarifying its unique systemic role, very different from a project manager, to thoroughly debunking those common myths that unfortunately hold so many organizations back, and then laying out the tangible, quantifiable value it delivers while highlighting the really clear and frankly quite catastrophic risks of not having one. It truly sounds like the execution engine that transforms that fragmented, sometimes chaotic project activity into predictable strategic outcomes for the entire business.
Indeed. It really is that bridge between strategy and execution. So if your projects are consistently underperforming, if your teams feel like they're drowning in process chaos and administrative overload, or if you as leadership are spending countless hours just trying to reconcile disparate updates instead of focusing on steering the strategy and identifying new growth avenues, then it's probably time. It's time to seriously talk about building and empowering a PMO that truly drives real measurable business value for your specific organization. It really is an investment in your future capability to execute and grow.
We certainly hope this deep dive has given you, our listeners, not just information, but perhaps some profound insights and clear, actionable perspectives for your own organization's journey. Maybe it's given you that moment of clarity you needed to make a critical strategic decision about how you manage work and drive results. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and sources and joining us on this journey to becoming better informed.
My pleasure. It's a critical topic.
We look forward to our next deep dive with you.